Sarah understood. As she looked around the room at the students' interacting class, she noticed that Tracy, the model, was not present. Of course, that was what she had expected. Probably what every person who had been present the week before and had heard Tracy's announcement that she would be on a TV series had expected. But still, the reality of it sinking in was a bit depressing. Sarah noticed that the room was noticeably somber, so it stood to reason that the other students had thoughts similar to her own. Hi, I'm Neil A. Yeager, and today I'm reading from my novel Non-Hollywood. If you freeze this video whenever I hold up the book cover, you may have noticed this little blurb on the front. A novel of actors, indie filmmakers, and musicians, and the life not quite in the business. Now, by chance, do you know anyone like that? Many of us do. If so, please consider sharing Non-Hollywood with them. Obviously, that little share button on the video is free. Now, of course, if you wanted to buy a copy and send it to them, that would be really swell too. Actually, that would be more swell. More swell? Sweller? Whatever. This is chapter 57, The Acting Coach Gives Up. Sure, she knew, and presumably everyone else in class knew, that she should be happy for Tracy's success, and she was. But she was also dwelling on her own failure. She couldn't help it. As Sarah quietly stashed her bag in one of the room's cubbyholes, she noticed something else as well. For as long as he had been her acting coach, Coach Bobby was always the first person to arrive. Today, he was not present. Sarah had to wonder if perhaps Coach Bobby was as down as everyone else in the room. As she was wondering this, a man she had never seen before entered the room. Though Sarah knew that she had not seen this man before, she realized that he did look familiar. He looked quite a bit like Coach Bobby. And at that realization, Sarah suddenly felt quite uneasy. She looked over at Larry, who stood beside her, and saw that Larry had apparently noticed the same thing. Instinctively, she reached out and grabbed Larry's hand. The stranger cleared his throat and called out, Could I have everybody's attention, please? And the room fell silent. The stranger continued, My name is Adam. I'm not sure how to say this, so I guess that I'll just say it. Your teacher, my brother, Robert, he's gone. He took his own life last night. I'm sorry. Sarah looked down at the floor. Oh, Jesus, she murmured. Adam continued, Now, obviously, there's no more class. I don't know about the money you've paid and all that. Robert's boyfriend, Brad, would know, but he's obviously too upset at the moment. But I'm sure he'll figure it out and let you know. Robert laughed a lot, but he had a lot of problems with depression. He never felt like he had achieved any of his goals. But I don't know what I'm saying here, just that he's gone, and I'm sorry. As Sarah and Larry walked through the front door of Sarah's apartment, Larry said, I guess it happens sometimes. Sometimes people who seem really positive and full of life are really just using that to hide what's really going on, I guess. It just seems so unreal to me, said Sarah. Just so unreal. Larry had been carrying a few containers of Thai food, which he set down on the counter. He pulled a few plates out of her cabinet and asked, You've never known anyone who died before? Well, yeah, but not like this. My grandpa died a few years ago, but he was old and had been sick. Coach Bobby was, I don't know, he just seemed fine. Yeah, it happens. Well, what about you, Larry? You've been through this before? I'm almost 50, so yeah, I've seen my share. But why don't we get off this topic? Didn't you say you had 1 million movies? Well, I don't personally have 1 million movies. What I meant was that I could find 1 million of them on Netflix. And I don't know if there are literally a million movies on there, though I wouldn't be surprised. But that's what I meant. Well, how about we watch something fun? Sarah thought for a moment. You mean something old? Maybe something with Molly Ringwald in it? I would love to watch something with Molly Ringwald. I did have a crush on her when I first saw 16 Candles in the theater. But I object to the something old comment. When I think of something old, I think of something with Spencer Tracy or Humphrey Bogart. Who? Larry turned and looked at her, Thai food dangling from his fork. She just laughed. Just kidding. I know who those people are. But you had a Molly Ringwald crush when you were a kid? Yes, and I doubt that I was the only male in my age group who had one. Well then, Molly Ringwald it is, she said. As she reached for her TV remote, her phone began ringing. She looked at the display and said, "Oh look, it's Jeremy. Joy." "You're not going to answer it?" "No, I am not," she said as she picked up the remote and began to search Netflix for Molly Ringwald movies. Larry carried over 2 plates full of Thai food and set them down on the coffee table by her futon. Sarah looked down at her phone. Oh, Jeremy left a message. Should we have a listen? Sure. Sarah put the phone on speaker and played back Jeremy's message. "Hello, Sarah. This is Jeremy from class. I am quite sure that you are as devastated as I at this evening's ghastly news. I have to say that it has given me pause, made me look deeply into my soul as to the meaning of what I am doing. I came home and read through my script, and I have decided that it is not nearly good enough. I have thrown it in the trash, and I shall search out all extant copies and make sure that they are trashed as well. Then I shall start anew. I am sorry that I raised your expectations, but I need to start again. Need not to compromise. I need to reach for greatness. I realize now that life should not be wasted. It should be spent reaching for greatness. It is my fondest wish that when I arrive at my journey's end, you will still be available to help me realize my vision. Thank you. Good night." Sarah and Larry looked at each other in puzzlement. Said Sarah, "What the hell was that?" "That was a really weird guy doing a really weird thing. I think that's what that was. He worked on that script for almost 2 years, and now he's going to throw it away and start again? What in the hell is wrong with that guy?" And that is a very good question. "Well, shit," said Sarah. "Yeah. There goes my lead role in a well-written script. All because Jeremy has I don't even know what to call it. Change of heart doesn't sound quite right because it is such a ridiculous decision. Jesus." As it turned out, they skipped Molly Ringwald and instead ended up watching some foreign comedy whose title they had both remembered someone from class recommending. Of course, Sarah's attention was not on the film. Rather, her thoughts drifted between the sorrow of losing Coach Bobby to the annoyance of the loss of stupid Jeremy's film. As they sat side by side on the futon, Sarah reached over and wrapped both hands around Larry's arm, then leaned over and placed her head on his shoulder. Instead of relaxing into this gesture, Larry stiffened. "Don't you want some Thai food?" "No, not really hungry," she replied. So that was how they sat, Sarah on Larry's stiff shoulder and Larry awkwardly attempting to eat his Thai food with basically one hand. Sarah didn't laugh much at the comedy, and after a while she noticed that Larry wasn't laughing much either. It turned out that the movie, which was subtitled from French, was a broad comedy about a man around Larry's age chasing after a young woman about Sarah's age. During this, Larry did not seem to relax even one muscle. But Sarah wasn't really watching the movie. She certainly wasn't paying enough attention to it to be reading the subtitles. Instead, her mind was off wandering about the way that things were going. Coach Bobby. There were just no words, not even inside of her head, just a strange feeling of sadness and what? Something unfulfilled. It had never occurred to her that Coach Bobby may have wanted something more from his life and his acting career. He was an acting coach. He seemed so happy doing it that honestly the thought had never even crossed Sarah's mind that perhaps there had been a time when Coach Bobby had dreams much like hers. A time when Coach Bobby had schlepped from audition to audition. His had been a class on performance, and as far as she could remember, he had never mentioned any of the rest of it. The auditions, the marketing, the agent search. But from his actions and the comments of his brother, it would seem obvious that he had wanted more. He had indeed had dreams and aspirations, and they had gone unfulfilled. So there must have been a time when Coach Bobby was just like Sarah. Perhaps right up until the end he had been just like her. Did that mean that she would one day be just like him? Sarah took one hand from Larry's arm and began rubbing the back of his shoulders. Here was something real. Here was someone she knew she wanted to spend lots of time with. She had realized that the first time they had gone out for coffee. Here was that person. Here was a way to forget all of those thoughts of Coach Bobby and the ghost of Sarah yet to be. Here was a way to forget about the fairly unwarranted success of her classmate Tracy. Here was a way to forget the success of her ex-boyfriend Mitchell, who was probably off gallivanting with starlets. And gee, wouldn't that be funny if Mitchell and Tracy hooked up? Here was a way to forget the phone calls from her mother telling her that she should come home and join the family insurance firm. Here was a way to forget Jeremy and his fickle project. Here was a way to forget her failures, her one after another failures. Here was... Sarah leaned over and kissed Larry on the neck. He jumped. Sarah, he murmured, and she kissed him again. This is not a good idea. And why not? She asked. Well, for starters, this is a weird day, and it's never a good idea to do things like this on a day like this. Doesn't matter that it's a weird day. I've been thinking about this since the day we met, she said, and kissed him again. Larry quickly stood up from the futon and out of her grasp. He took a step backward and said, and that's flattering, but this isn't, I'm not... What? This is... He trailed off, then took a breath, obviously gathering his thoughts. He let out a deep breath, then continued, you do realize that I am quite a bit older than you. I had noticed that, yes. I am probably your father's age. Actually, Larry, you're 2 years older than my father. See? He said, trailing off. Sarah laughed again. See what? I must be missing something here. I was under the impression that men your age were crazy about women my age. A lot of them are, yes. So we agree. Guys your age like going after girls my age, she said. Then she pointed to the TV screen. They make movies about it. It's a cliche. Yes, but not a good cliche. Sarah simply looked at him. The smile slowly faded from her lips, and she spoke in a quiet, serious tone. Let's take age out of it for a second. I'm telling you that I like you. I really feel like we're compatible. It feels right being with you, and to be completely honest with you, before class and before we found out about Coach Bobby and all, I was hoping that we could come back here and maybe something more would happen. Sarah, you like me, right? Of course I do. And I like you, she said. Obviously. And I am an adult. I mean, okay, so I first saw The Breakfast Club on DVD, not in a movie theater. So what? It's not like there's something illegal going on. And we have these feelings for one another. Let's forget about the whole age thing. Larry looked down at the floor and shook his head. I can't, he said. Sarah was stunned. Larry stood there. She sat there. It was an awkward several moments. Finally, Larry said, "Look, I think I should go. I'm sorry that..." And at this point, words failed him. "Oh, I'll just go," he said. Larry picked up his jacket, headed for the door, then exited. Sarah stared at the closed door. There, alone in the empty apartment, she wasn't sure exactly what had just happened. In a somber tone of disbelief, she simply whispered to the quiet room, "Wow."